Welcome back to the big board. We're going to call this take two, since I knocked the camera over and smashed the pieces everywhere. Welcome back. We're looking at Napoleon's Last Gamble. It's a Kevin game from the Library of Napoleonic Battles. About 10 years ago or so, I had played a couple of these titles. Here's one piece I forgot to put back somewhere. We'll just leave him there. And I came away a little underwhelmed and had some preconceived notions about what Napoleonic combat should be like and what this scale was and all this sort of fun stuff, and really didn't touch much of this particular system from Zucker, the OSG company, again. I did enjoy, however, Zucker's efforts with the higher level scale where you're at about the 1 kilometer per hex versus this 525 meter, 50 acre hex, 1 hour turn thing. So that, I enjoyed that immensely, and I believe there's a couple of different systems there. They're all either 5x or 1x or 2x or whatever, but all of those I quite enjoyed for different reasons. Yeah. One of the big challenges with the system straight off the bat is that it does have hidden information, and you're supposed to play with the counters face down and all that sort of fun stuff. And obviously playing solo, I don't do that, which does take away one of the key aspects that is pretty interesting in the game is the use of vedettes, which is breaking down a cavalry unit and using them to scout and recon, find out who's who and what's what, and also do a little subterfuge with moving units around and things like that, because we can, flip these guys. Oh, well, not that guy. We can. Well, some of these don't have. Where are they? We're supposed to put markers on them. That's right. There's markers here, and I don't have them out. Anyway, so I'm not going to go through blow by blow on what occurred in Quatre. It was, if you can see geographically, the French have captured Quatre. They've made a pretty solid advance through the little farm fortress here, and then attacked on either flank, pushed back the defenders here, and then as the reinforcements were coming in, managed to screen them off with the cavalry, took 1 or 2 steps losses as these larger, heavier British formations came in. These brigades are quite strong. They're 644s, and the attacking from both sides, and then having some units here, and deftly using the artillery allowed us to take Quatre pretty easily, in fact, and we managed to push Wellington all the way back to here, right back to this line, just out of screen. I'm going to zoom out a little bit for the moment so you can see the entire map, basically, because really the battle is played in this section here, despite the fact that you have half a map set up. Not really needed. So I thought what I would do is just quickly, if I can, discuss some of the things that I found different and refreshing and enjoyed, and some of the things that are new items that I'm a little wary of, and then see if there's any validation of my original opinions of the game and things like that. So as I said, the game it's 1 hour turns, 525 meters or yards a hex. I think it is at yards or meters. He said, quickly trying to look it up. Can I find it? Here it is, 525 yards, 50 acres, yeah. Right, so, and these 1 hour turns do give us a little bit of granularity, but certainly not the granularity of La Bataille or some of the other titles that are around. And for some reason I thought that the scale was more granular for this particular system, but it's not. So in this particular battle, the challenges that you face are, how do you, as the French, progress up the road across a pretty narrow front, because you've got some swampy business here on one side and then the woods on the other, and woods are going to remove your combined arms benefits, and then also reduce the combat values of various forces. The cavalry is going to be halved, for instance, right? And so there's that, but you have a very small and weak force that you're fighting against. The the Allies, the coalition forces, really just had a hard time. They actually lost Pack, and these two brigades, the arty, this artillery, and this chap as well. So that demoralized that formation, the second Netherlands, I think they're called, Prince William's formation. They were demoralized off the bat, pretty much. And you can recover demoralization as units are killed and brought back on, right? Because they're eliminated, removed from the map, and then there's a die roll that you do, or depending on how they were eliminated. Some are permanently eliminated units, and some are ready and recovered and reorganized, and they come back onto the map, either reduced. Yeah, I think they come back on reduced. Now, we didn't get to that because we didn't get to the overnight phase. In the overnight phase, there's no combat, and that's the last turn of the scenario, so we didn't get to any of those things. So there's no recovery in this particular game. But there are the effects of demoralization, right? And here's one of the things that I felt was not particularly useful in the gameplay and didn't really seem to have a very significant impact. If you manage your HQs and your leaders, your core leaders, your commanders and your officers, if you manage them effectively, you shouldn't have to worry too much about being demoralized because you won't be making independent initiative rolls to activate a unit. So if, for instance, there was this particular unit here, right, a 5-3-4, here's a morale of 3. If we were wanting, let's say he was out of range of his commander and I wanted to activate him, I would have to roll a die, a d6, and 3 or less I would get to activate him. Well, when you're demoralized, his morale will go down to 2, so it would make it harder. But if I'm smart with my movement and my positioning, and I can activate a full division at a time with a certain type of leader, that problem's not going to come up very often. Now, the other problem that you get when you're demoralized is that you are not allowed to advance after combat. Now, that could be significant, but generally speaking, if you're attacking and there's multiple units attacking and you're using potentially multiple formations, and one of the other ones is not demoralized, well, they can obviously advance after the combat, right? But these demoralized guys won't be able to. So it really doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect my movement, doesn't affect combat other than the advance after combat, right? Now, similarly, for supply, as long as you keep a main route open and you're within range of your supply wagon and your leaders are in range of all that, supply really has no bearing on the game. It really, even maybe more so in a campaign, but certainly in a one-day scenario, it's not going to make a difference, which I wouldn't expect that to be the case. So supply in a campaign will obviously be different, and it will matter, and there's potential there to cut units off. But once again, you're going to face the same circumstances, the same issues, the same detriments of being demoralized if you're out of supply, which so not particularly significant, right? It's not going to limit your movement. Now, that is true, you cannot, when you're out of supply, don't believe you can road march, so that will affect you. So that's a big deal. So I've just found those two aspects of the system kind of, okay, fine. Now, the big thing, I think, is combat. And there's been a lot of commentary about Zucker's combat tables, and he's defended his combat system pretty rigorously at this particular scale. And, you know, it's a 1d6 roll low to kill things, and I think it's 1 to 5 to 6 to 1 is the scale. I think it used to be less than that. It used to only go up to 4 to 1. And that's one of the things before I talk too much more about combat, I must say I really do like the new series rules booklet, full color, very clean, very well organized. The wording has been crisped up, tightened up a lot, and I found rules referencing really, really good. So it was literally set it up and start playing and just go through the sequence of play and double check things as we got into combat. You know, is there a column shift for combined arms in this particular circumstance? And you've got the nice full color tables here, none of that mushy font printed on cardboard stock that bleeds. So you've got these really nice crisp tables here now with very clean descriptions of the movement points to enter or cross, what impact that may have on other aspects of the game play, and then a similar table for the combat effects as well. And that was very handy. You can pretty much play off this, and on the other side you've got your CRT and your bombard table. And that was where I really started to appreciate the game a little bit more for combat, and that was taking advantage of the bombard table. It's quite easy to push up units, and even if you're adjacent to somebody else, you can use 1 or 2 steps of artillery, bombard the units that you don't want to physically have combat with, and that is a soak-off. That counts as a soak-off or a screening. I would call it a soak-off, right? I think they call it a soak-off in the rules. That allows you to do that, right? So that makes it really easy for you to mass some forces, but you can also bombard who you're attacking, right? And if you get enough bombard factors going, there are some pretty nifty results in here. So potentially forcing a retreat, losing a step, losing 2 steps. Now, you're not going to get 10 very often, but you are going to quite easily be able to, in this particular battle, accrue between 2 and 5 or 2 and 6, if you do it correctly, artillery factors. It's interesting that the table is reversed from the CRT, where you got to roll high to be effective here, whereas with the CRT, you need to roll low to be effective. I just found that odd and mildly, okay. What do I want to roll? What do I want to will my die to roll? I want to roll high for this, but low for that. Okay. And then there's these nifty little results in here where there's an asterisk. It means that we will drop down to the shock table, which when you're attacking at 2 to 1 and you do roll a 6, which is not a fun result, it actually becomes a skirmish result, right? And that's where if you do have better initiative value or morale values than the defender, and there are other circumstances that will change these odds as well, change these factors as well, you're then going to cross-reference what the result is, and that may well end up, even though you got an AR and rolled a 6 on a 2 to 1, you could end up with the defender retreats if they are, for instance, if the defender is demoralized, like these British, these Saxe-Weimar guys were, right? So they were a 2, and then we got a bonus for something. I think because I had combined arms, I forget now what it was, where the modified initiative went up to 4, so we ended up forcing them to retreat 2. So combat works. There's cavalry charges and this stuff, but it's odd in that you're placing the cavalry on top of the enemy, and I get it, it's a 50-acre hex, so we're doing that. And that really just is going to impact retreats. It'll force an elimination result, which is pretty useful. I tended not to do that in this particular game, and probably shows why there are so many British units still left on the map, and or vice versa, why the French have so many units still on the map. They actually didn't lose any units, but did manage to take 2-step losses. So that combat worked okay. A much better, I felt, than when I first played this system all those years ago. Now, I gotta say, the map, I like the look of the map, but when you actually get down to brass tacks and start playing in here, I found it particularly difficult to understand what was a slope hex and what wasn't, and what was a hilltop and what wasn't, just because the shading and the coloring and the example in the rule book is not colored. It's not actual map terrain showing it, it's just a diagram. And I was always double checking that I'm going to move units out of the way. So that was the only disappointment with the maps. Otherwise, they're beautiful and highly functional and very attractive, right? There's no question about that. I'm trying to think what else. The leadership system, the initiative system, the command system, it all works. It's all pretty straightforward. And if you keep your formations close together, you're never going to have command issues, I don't believe, assuming I'm playing correctly. And it is what it is, right? It was a Mr. Bug, get off the map. It all worked out okay. I believe we got a little bit of a historical result here, right? Because we have the French taking Quatre relatively early, and then we just hunkered down, right? I don't need to race in here and kill units. Now, if I'm playing the campaign, I probably do want to come in here and try and beat up all of these other smaller units because we're going to have to fight them another day. But the scenario didn't really call for that. You do receive VPs for killing units, and given that we had 15 VPs for capturing the 2 primary locations here, plus the 3 units we'd already knocked out, I didn't see we were on. The French were, when I say we, the French were in a situation where the British needed to do something to change the game, right? So it became incumbent upon them to work out how to make a difference. And this is why we saw Uxbridge on the right flank here, starting to press Kellerman and his cav back, Roussel, back through the woods. I did come up through these woods, even though that's allegedly a death knell for Quatre. It managed to work out just fine for the cav that came through here and flanked here. Well, one of the things that we were able to do was put cavalry here and slow down the reinforcements and bog them all up here. That's what gave the French the ability to sort of isolate the enemy over in this section. Okay, well, look, I kind of waffle on enough here. I thought I would just share some of this with you. The goal will be to play La Bataille at some point in the near future, and Hexasim's Last Eagles, play that again. I think I've mentioned in writing on the blog. If you go to the blog, by the way, you'll see, probably should have mentioned that first up. Go to the blog, you'll see that there will be 2 or 3 posts about this particular battle, and I'll run through some of the combats probably, but it's pretty much just a running commentary of who did what, where, and when, without getting into the nitty-gritty of odds calculation and stuff like that. So if you want to get a feel for the entire battle, turn by turn, across the 7 or 8 turns that it runs for, how many turns is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 turns plus the night turn. So 7 turns, 7 hours. All right. We'll talk to you soon. All the best. Roll dice.